Hi everybody, welcome to episode 4 of Needle Drop Nation. This one is entitled The Radio Revolution, or Revolution on the Radio. I just
It's
massively fucked up.
it's Revolution on the Radio, Nick.
And oh my goodness, Jody, we're in for a treat. This is some of the best music, I think, ever. It's some genius stuff.
Absolutely, absolutely. This year, it's the year when, rock was art. It was the emergence of the identity of baby boomers getting into adulthood. And, this is, I think, the pinnacle of when baby boomers really articulated politics, music,
Yep.
style, and it all converged together. And it was a great year because this is when, you get from Haight-Ashbury to Hyde Park. And
Yep.
there was a lot of sharing as far as politics, music, fashion, the summer of love. So we're, guys, everybody, we're in for a treat on this episode. This year
We
is a
are.
fantastic year.
It is, and we've got, I think, about 30 odd tracks on the playlist that's accompanying this. Do go check it out because there are some absolutely banging tunes. We're going to be talking our way through some of them, if not most of them. But yeah, they are absolutely brilliant. And of course, 1967, Jody, we can't go past it without mentioning the Beatles because they played a big part, but we're going to come back to that a little later on. We talk about the revolution on the radio from the UK point of view. It was pirate radio. Radio Caroline was introduced. So we were offshore broadcasting to the world out on these little pirate ships. It's hard to believe now when you think about how radio has evolved and how it is between both countries and with the internet, and we can stream all the time. But in order to get these records, to the youth, to the people that really wanted to listen to them, we didn't be at the establishment weren't playing. So we had nothing in the establishment to play them. So they had to go and do what we had to do. So it was like the necessity. What's the phrase? Necessity is the mother of invention, and so that is why pirate radio was invented. And the beautiful thing is, over the years, it then very quickly became mainstream, and all the DJs that were on the boats came over and took over the BBC back in the UK. And so so it was a godsend for all the things. But this is cultural revolution at its finest. Now, I think it's fair to say, Jody, there might have been some illegal substances being smoked and taken while this
Oh,
revolution took place.
and it also enhanced creativity. That was the essence at the time. I mean, especially with Haight-Ashbury, we've had artists that were experimenting. The Beatles were there, Jefferson Airplane. If you listen to their music, like White Rabbit, where would
Yeah,
and then and also having a song "Somebody to Love" and White Rabbit on the same album, there had to be some essence of
something
experimentation.
something going on there, definitely.
Yes, yes.
So where are we going to kick off then, Jody? Let's have a little
So
kick
a
off
lot
from
of talking about artists and Jefferson Airplane, there were a lot of artists that finally new artists that landed on the on the charts in 1967. You've got the Doors,
one of my favourites.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like go, they made that strip "Go Go Whiskey" like a popular place as well. Then I think about the Doors. I think about that space. Also, we've got also Jimi Hendrix. Are you
Oh,
experienced? Yes. And then, I think the song goes Purple Haze of the Year. And then you also have the Moody Blues, talk about experimentation and rock in the UK. And then we got some bands that formed in 1967 also. We got The Foundation, from the UK. I don't know,
mhm.
Baby, Now That I Found You, which is such a beautiful song. We also have, the Young Rascals, Groovin'. That's a
Yeah, you've introduced me to them. I wasn't really aware of them until you sent me the playlist the other day.
Oh my gosh. It's funny because they kind of remind me of the Monkees and like that kind of when you have a male band and also the tambourine and the maracas play
Yeah,
a
cool.
play a dominant, part in their orchestration, which is really interesting. And they were very blues heavy too, as well. So I just wanted, the Young Rascals. You also had the Birds, Turn, 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 which I think had really captured the essence of, peace, anti-war sentiment, back in that era in 1967, and
Of
that
course,
was
yeah, because the Vietnam War still thundering along. That lasted a rather long time, didn't it?
it did. It was from 1965 to 1974.
Wow,
Mm-hmm.
wow, that was a long time. That's
Much
one
of
of the
that,
things. Being a kid in the UK, or especially six, I was only one. Yeah, it was even to 74 though, not really having any any particular knowledge because we don't have the communication like we have now. Yeah, we had no real knowledge, or certainly I wasn't aware of the Vietnam War until much later, in,
mm,
when it's kind of like early history and the horrors of that. What happened, crikey?
which is
Mhm.
interesting. Yeah, because I know that it was on the news. A lot of progressive newsmen, were basically trying to cover the war and provide the truth. Some were cut
Yeah,
off the air, yes. And what was really interesting about the war was that, we had it in the textbooks, in our history textbooks in the United States, but it's always about, the Tet Offensive, the U.S. troops trying to save, there was a very biased, perspective of why the U.S. had to come um, into Vietnam. So what really made it interesting, the music, the music that was playing on the airwaves
hmm,
really connected to listening to the other side and the opinions about the war, which was, we are seeing so many soldiers getting killed. We're sending off a lot of men. We were sending a lot of people, doctors out there too, as well, and people to help out. But we lost a lot of lives, and even
yeah,
soldiers who did come back from the Vietnam War, had serious health issues. Some, almost died. Um, and, this was the time when, you had, finally in 1973, 74, when there was the realization that the U.S. did not even have a chance to win this war. And but I definitely like to reflect back to 1967, where we have
track it.
great music that reflected that, and also celebrated the Summer of Love. So,
Mm.
and not, we celebrated the Summer of Love. I know in the UK, in Hyde Park, there was the celebration of Summer of Love, right, Nick?
Yeah, absolutely. That was, I mean, Hyde Park was the place to go. I think there was about 1 million people, I think, for one of the Stones concerts. Might not have been 67, that might have been 69, thinking about it. But yeah, certainly, hundreds of thousands of people can get into Hyde Park. And, Hendrix came to London. It was the scene, and I think the music reflects that. We had, of course, on the fashion side, we had Mary Quant,
Hmm.
really came to prominence in '67, and I think I'm right. I can't think of which festival it was, but I was reading up that Jimi Hendrix set fire to his guitar at
Hmm.
one of them. I think it might have been the Haight-Ashbury one. Not sure. You get him setting fire to his guitar. We got the Who are on the playlist as well. They used to trash their instruments every single time. And there's a really funny story. I saw them being interviewed once. I mean, it was recording an interview they had. And basically, they were sitting there, and Roger Daltrey was saying, we sat there in front of our accountants, and they were saying, you've got no money. So please stop breaking your instruments, because every time, you're touring, and that's what's making you money, but then you're destroying the instruments, so you're not making any. And it wasn't until Tommy, the rock opera, uh, that they really started to make some serious wonga, some serious wedge.
Really,
Um,
it wasn't until Tommy. That's interesting.
yeah, yeah, because they were
That was a
just on
great.
a
That was a great storyline. Yep.
self-destruct mission.
No,
I
it's
don't think it was
fascinating.
helped by Keith Moon driving Rolls Royces into swimming pools and things like that.
Oh my gosh, they were that crazy. That is
They were that,
hysterical.
yeah, they were that bonkers, but they had great music.
Mhm. I think one of my songs that I liked during that year from The Who was "I Could See for Miles and Miles," you know? No, and what's really fascinating when you mention about going back to the destructive mode of The Who on stage, again, it kind of reminds me about that punk rock kind of angst attitude. But I will never forget seeing like early footage of Pete Townsend going up to the speaker and going,
Yeah.
and destroying his guitar. I'm like, I said, "Is that allowed on stage?" I think I saw this like when I was a teenager. I was like, "Damn!"
Yeah, I'm amazed.
And you're just like, and then the speaker that's also on, and you're just like, or the amplifier, you're like, "This is crazy."
What? Yeah,
I wonder
there's
if it
another
was.
song. There's another song on that album called Tattoo. I think it's called "Welcome to My Life Tattoo." All about going and getting your first tattoo. I've not got any tattoos because I'll be honest, I'm too scared to get one.
Oh wow!
Yeah, that was one of the songs I used to listen to a lot when I was in my early teens. Welcome to.
Oh
I'm a man now.
yes,
Great lyrics. Those are the days.
those were the days. And when you look into the R&B scene, some of the greatest hits were also released in 1967. The fabulous duet, Marvin Gaye, Tammy Terrell, "Ain't No Mountain High Enough." By the way, there were different versions of that song sung. The Supremes, Diana Ross and the Supremes had their version of it.
Yeah.
But who was the songwriting team that did "Ain't No Mountain High Enough"?
No.
Ashford and Simpson.
No way.
Yeah, they've been a composer, husband and wife team for a very long time, and that was one of the songs that really put a mark for them on the top of the charts. "Ain't No Mountain High Enough," and of course you hear different artists
Hmm.
singing that song, and it's such a great song. Also, we had one of the best songs I think in R&B soul history is "I'm a Soul Man" by Sam and Dave.
Yeah, that's a
It's like,
yeah.
you know,
Again,
and
these are legendary songs.
exactly. Even on weddings up to this day, if I attend a wedding, the wedding bands play that song. I'm like, wow. And so it gets y'all pumped. It gets everybody like, all right, everybody's eating. All right, let's exercise. Let's go have the song. And everybody starts clapping. It's a great song. And then, "I Was Made to Love Her" by Stevie Wonder. Oh,
He seems to have been around forever, Stevie Wonder.
and just listening to his
Yeah,
beautiful harmonica, while he performs his tunes, it's just amazing. And look at him; this man is just a legend. And listening to young Stevie on the radio, and nowadays when I listen to my Spotify, it's very magical. Um,
yeah, and it's such a unique voice as well. You can tell almost by two things: one, the rhythm, a bit of harmonica, and then that
mhm.
beautiful voice is absolutely incredible. Now, we have to say there are no Rolling Stones tracks on this on this year's playlist
Mhm.
because their album, the Satanic Majesty's Request, was a little bit of a weird one. I used to have it as a kid. When I got into the Stones in my teens, I did kind of buy a lot of vinyl, a lot of albums. Went through a phase of getting some very rare ones, and I actually had the album cover that had a 3D little 3D block on it.
Mhm.
Moved it around, and it was all
Cool.
psychedelic. So I was like, wow, that was so cool. And people would come and go, oh my god, and then they'd actually listen to it, and it's like, bit weird.
Oh my goodness! But there was a beautiful track on that album that we
Exactly,
talked about earlier.
we
You know,
did, yeah. Color, yeah,
"She's a Rainbow," right? "She's a
rainbow.
rainbow." Yeah, that
La,
one.
la, la,
Oh,
la, la.
yep. And major companies use that. I think it was Apple, if I'm not
Mm,
mistaken, that used it on one of their ads on television when they started with the iMac, offering it in different colors.
that's it, and that's the thing. You think these things written in '67, recorded in '67, and then used, 30, 40 years later. That's one of the things I love about music, Jody. You can have, it doesn't matter. Some tunes just fit the time, fit the right place,
Hmm.
and yeah, and fit the right narrative. So, and that was one. But anyway, we haven't included it in the playlist because there are way better songs. We can, not least Morrison
Yeah.
Brown Eyed Girl, 67. I
Yes,
think.
Van Morrison, and I think he's from Ireland, right? Van Morrison.
Yeah, yeah, it
Yeah,
is. Yeah, but yeah, I didn't realise that song was that old. But again, you hear it on the radio today. You really do.
yeah. And I think it's a great song because it's got that, doom, 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 doom. And several songs have that kind of beat around that time,
It's a
that you
kind of
just
hook,
love.
isn't it? Yeah, it's like a
Yes.
earworm that just is going to get into your head.
Hmm.
To a band that had more earworms than anyone else I can imagine. What else was going on, like politically in the States, Jody? 'Cause there was,
So one thing for sure is that we were still going on. The civil rights movement was still going on. There was also, you know, in 1966 you had the post 65 wave, and then the in 1965 the right to vote. Blacks had the right to vote. Now in 1967, what we saw was the first appointment in the Supreme Court justice, African American Thurgood Marshall, 1967, and that was a monumental time in African American history. So here we are, and keep in mind the marches in Selma, and
Mhm.
it was so recent. I mean, the civil rights movement dating back to the early '60s, and now you move like 5 years, 6 years down the line, and you get your first appointed African American member in the Supreme Court justice, and that's a monumental. Yes, that was monumental point in African American history and in just in American history in general. Representation. Um, but I mean, one of the things I must say in 1967 as well was that you also had the Monterey Pop, and then you had artists. This is like now you're talking like years before Woodstock, and this was a Monterey Pop, California, one of the biggest outdoor concerts that you will see documentaries about. You see Joplin, you see Jefferson Airplane, you see the Who. It's just and the Stones. It was an incredible all star lineup. And again, if people wanted to utilize a reference to how music was what represented that era for like the adulthood or the teenage years or the adulthood of the baby boomers, that period that you and I love
Yeah, exactly.
from the 60s, would be watching
Yeah,
the documentary on Monterey Pop.
yeah,
Yeah.
that would be fantastic. And I guess that was really like the birth of the mega festival.
Hmm.
Everyone could come and see a lot of caftans.
Caftans, and of course probably people were taking some stuff while they were watching.
Yeah,
Um,
but again,
mhm.
that I
Hippies.
think this led to this incredible creativity because
Hmm.
whilst whilst full disclosure, we don't partake, um, but particularly for creatives, you know, getting into that creative vibe, then
Hmm.
then that was the, the way to do it back in the 60s. It was also in the late 60s. Yeah,
That's the period of psychedelia. And then when you even when you talk to people, you talk to Gen Xers, millennials, baby boomers, and you just say psychedelia, they're like, ah, the hippies, the hippies, the hippies.
love and peace, man. Yeah,
Yeah, and the daisies, and then the rock. This is what I say. Rock music was, and music at that was art. You know, it really paved the way to people down the road and in the next years to make an emphasis of the freedom of expression. You know, on the airwaves. So I think you've hit that on the nail with the whole thing about experimentation and freedom of expression in the psychedelic era.
and how did that manifest itself in the US? I'm just thinking, Of course, in the UK we had to have the pirate radio, as we talked about earlier on, in order to actually get the songs played. Were there were there issues? Because I guess in the States didn't have a national radio like we had national radio in the UK.
Hmm.
So all your radio stations were funded by advertising, I guess. And was there
We
any
did.
pushback from advertisers, or were there new up and coming advertisers which were like, yeah, let's embrace this whole fashion?
Well, we do have National Public Radio, which was is funded by the government, and then you do have public radio stations that were supported by universities. We still have one from Fordham University, which is amazing, that plays great music, and it plays an eclectic music. So
Mm,
you had that, and then you had your local stations. Like I'm talking on this perspective of New York, where
yeah,
you had you know stations like WCBS, which were affiliated. We have WCBS on television network, and they were heavily funded by sponsors like WCBS. You had WNEW, which was also affiliated with WNEW Channel 5 in New York City. So those stations in particular were funded by sponsors, and that's where you hear a lot of heavy like advertisements, commercials,
yeah.
radio commercials, which you still do here nowadays.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Um,
still.
yeah, but and then NPR is still around. We do have National Public Radio, and of course, we have some university stations. We have Fordham University, and they're the best because they provide music that like you would hear. They have an hour of jazz. They'd have an hour. They have some on the hour of like funk, like classic funk, which I listen to. So and I would hear some songs like from the Box Tops, who were they had that song, or the Foundations, I should say. It was the Foundations, and they came from the UK, and they were founded in the same year, 1967. They had that beautiful song, "Baby Now That I Found You." You know,
Yeah, oh, lovely.
love that song. So there was a sound that you can see, from like the Rascals, the Young Rascals, and then also with the Foundations, about a certain groove that culminated and was notable in the late 60s. But one of the things that you talk about, the psychedelic moment, Nick, you and I talked about them in our past episodes, and I know we're going to talk about in the future, is the Moody Blues.
Yeah,
The
oh, Nights in White Satin.
Mhm.
Ooh, scary for some young girls, I believe. Jody, do you like to
Yes,
tell that story?
especially the first time I ever heard that song was when I was a toddler. My mom was listening. She goes, "Oh my God, this is such a beautiful song." I'm like, and the orchestration and the guy's yearning, the vocalist, he's and I love you, and he's like like he's yearning and moaning,
Mm.
and I said, "Mommy, he's like he looks like he's getting killed. Shut it off," so. But of course, and my mom was like, "What's the matter? This is a great song," and I'm like, "Oh God,
Yeah.
shut it off." And then, but as I got older, I listened to it. I also listened to an extended version of it where the orchestration was prolonged. You
Oh,
know, it really made me understood about how when the Moody Blues produced and recorded this, they really were. They had they had exposure to classical music. Just listening to the song again and again. I just was. I began to appreciate, and my respect and admiration for that song grew as I got older. But of course, when I was young, that was a different story.
we
Hmm.
cannot ignore it any longer. There
Hmm.
was just the massive album, the massive band. They hadn't toured because they went into the studio while all those bands we were chatting about went to these amazing love festivals and rock festivals. The Beatles went the other way. They went studio bound
Hmm.
and they came up with Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And
Beautiful.
wow, it's just like I remember first hearing it as a young teen. I believe I had a friend who was the vicar's son. That's it.
Hmm.
And yeah, he played it, and I'm like, wow, that is unbelievable. I've never heard anything like it, and I don't think anyone had at that time. We
Nope.
can roll off the songs. The big one, of course, is All You Need Is Love. What an anthem.
Oh, that. No, that album in itself was a masterpiece. You know, and one thing for sure is that when it had Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, it started with that, and then it had what was the track that was right after it. Oh, Ringo sings. He finally hear Ringo singing. A little love for my friends. That
Mhm. Yeah, of course,
song.
yeah.
It segues into that, and it's just incredible. When I first heard that album, and I did not know this until later on, was that it sounded like a soundtrack.
Yes,
It
yeah.
it was, of course, we knew it was produced in the studio, but the album itself, you could tell when an album is produced for like a play, a soundtrack. This album sounded like it was an album for a soundtrack to a spectacular film. And lo and behold, there was a film called The Magical Mystery Tour, and that
Yeah.
was a concept from Paul McCartney. That album was a masterpiece. When I heard that album for the first time, I think I was about 13 years old. The full album. I mean, I've heard tracks of it. My mom
Yeah.
was a huge Beatles fan, and she would sing some of the songs to me as lullabies, the Beatles tunes, believe it or not.
Yeah.
What was really interesting was when I heard that album from front to back, I said, "This sounds like a soundtrack. It sounds like
Mm.
a soundtrack to a movie or to a play." But then I just found out that it was recently was they did a movie. The Beatles did a movie later that year,
Yeah, of course.
called
Yeah. Magical
Magical Mystery.
Mystery Tour.
Exactly.
Roll up, roll up. And you say, yes, you were just saying about the fact that you really, same as me, you were 13 when you first heard the whole album and what it was. And you said it was like a soundtrack.
Hmm.
Um, and indeed, they created the Magical Mystery Tour, which was released in December '67, just
Hmm.
inside our year to talk about it. But there were some other incredible songs. There was When I'm 64. Oh, yeah. And it was just so different. Yeah,
Hmm.
it was like the Walrus,
Hmm.
and
I am
it
the
was,
walrus. You are
and
the
it's like,
Eggman. Cuckoo, cuckoo. It's like, would you hear that song? You're like, okay,
help it.
they were experimenting with some drug in there, when they wrote that song.
Yeah, that makes no sense at all.
It's funny because
But
I did have a conversation with my mom about that song, right? And I said, "Mom, was this song written for children?" She goes, "What do you mean?" And she's like, "I am the Eggman or the Walrus, cuckoo, cuckoo." She's like, I said, "Would somebody?" She's like, "No, Jody, that was just an artistic um,
uh,
freedom of expression song. They were experimenting."
but how cool! Experimenting and then recording it so we could enjoy it.
Exactly. Yeah. But
Yeah, there were other ones. I think we mentioned "Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds."
I love
Uh,
that song.
This beautiful song, absolutely beautiful song.
Hmm.
And I recently saw a documentary about another song on this album. It's going to come to me, "A Day in the Life." I read the
Yes.
news today. Oh boy, that
That's
one.
a great song. That's
And
I
how
think
they
that's one of
created
my
it.
favorite songs.
Well, so if you ever get the chance to watch this documentary, I'll try and find
Hmm.
it and link it in the show notes.
Hmm.
Basically, it was John's song to
Hmm.
begin with, and he got part of it, and they weren't sure where it was going to go, so they literally wrote some bars and said, like, in this bar we're going to have something, but we don't know what yet. And then he asked Paul if he had a song that he was working on, and Paul said, "Oh yeah, he did, but he wasn't sure." And so he said, "Okay, let's put that in
Uh-huh.
the side of it," and then
See.
he went back, and that's why it works so beautifully. It's two songs into
Hmm.
one, but
Hmm.
they did it so cleverly that yeah, amazing, amazing.
Yep. That's the magic
But
of
that's the
medleys.
joy, yeah, and that's the joy of taking that decision to be more studio based, because they knew they couldn't produce the music they wanted if they were just the four of them, or on a stage makes it very much more difficult to do. So
Yeah. Yeah,
And I'll
it's
have to double check where they recorded it because it might have been at Abbey Road. I'm not sure.
well, where what that album was, the masterpiece, and it's actually one of my favorite albums. I remember when I was listening to that album for the first time, but also the track that I loved was "Hello Goodbye." I know it's
Oh,
more,
yeah.
mainstream, but that song, can I tell you, even when whether I listened to it on a CD or when I got older, or listening, I would always rewind that song, because it was such an upbeat song. Um, and yeah, but when you just reminded me of a lot of the, experimental works that were in that album, I could tell you that album really took you on a journey, and
Oh,
that's
yeah.
that's why you would think that that album was actually a soundtrack to some film more than just an album itself, which it was a masterpiece.
Speaking of going on a journey, we've also got a couple of other songs in the playlist. One of my favourites is Waterloo Sunset. That's
Mm.
a journey going around London. So if you're a big fan of London, I used to work up in London quite a lot back in the old days. Yeah, I used to say my favourite city in the sunshine, my least favourite city in the rain. But no, London in the sunshine, oh, can't beat it. So yeah, so Waterloo Sunset, Waterloo part of London, really lovely. And then of course you can go to Ichiku Park
Cooper.
with the new
That
faces.
by small face. That I love that song too. That is just the chorus. When I was a little kid, the first time I heard that song on the radio, the part is when they go, "You're so, oh, you're so
So
beautiful,"
beautiful.
you know.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that chorus, and I thought that was, I thought that was the title of the song, and uh, and it's
I
funny.
thought you were going to say, yeah, I thought they were singing it to me.
Oh no! It's just such a song of celebration, and
Yeah.
that song to me resonated a lot. In regards to childhood. When I was watching some shows on PBS, I think it was either was it Sesame Street or the Electric Company. They
Yeah.
had some segments with songs at the time, and they would do a rendition of it, and that song came up. So that is a song that will always be reflective of my childhood too.
Oh,
From Small Faces, Ichiku Park. I
wow.
love it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, here's a question for you, Jody.
Mm.
Good point. When did Sesame Street start?
1968.
Next week, then.
And you had major actors who basically from PBS, from shows like Electric Company and Sesame Street. You had Rita Moreno,
Oh,
who were there from Electric Company.
wow.
Morgan Friedman, also from Electric Company too, as well. So, um, children's shows brought from PBS brought, like, the career of, the visibility nationwide
Yeah.
to major actors.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Well, can't wait. We'll have to cover a little bit of that next week then. 1968. We'll have a little segue into the Sesame Street.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody loves Sesame Street. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was the US, but we got it in the UK as well. Big Bird. Ah,
Hmm.
man,
Yeah.
it was just the best. And what's today's letter? It was only one of 26. Let's be honest.
I know,
the only
right?
the only confusing thing would be if it was Z. And like us in England, we're going Z, Z, Z. We haven't got a letter Z. Oh, Z.
Zed. Yes.
So we've had the Summer of Love. You had your first uh, African American Supreme Court judge.
Mm-hmm.
We had Mary Quant in the UK. We had Pirate Radio started. We had the birth of these mega festivals.
Hmm.
The Who, Hendrix. Man, absolutely incredible. Have we missed anything off, Jody?
And the world of psychedelia. It was like almost like it was like the baby boomers renaissance. What if you think about, because they're adults at this point, right?
Yeah,
They were
yeah,
born out,
young
or
adults. Yeah.
teenagers. They were like teenagers, adults. That this was the emergence of their adulthood, and was their realm of creativity. When it comes to that period of that era in music and in fashion. and in art, and what an incredible year.
Yeah,
So, and I was just going to say, and as a reminder to the audience, it would be wonderful if you guys can take the time to click on the link. We do have the additional Spotify list dedicated to this year, 1967. I hope that you all enjoy it. It's an incredible list, and also, thank you for everyone who's been listening, and continue to subscribe. Let other people know. We
yeah,
do have. We're also on iTunes, and we're also on Spotify as well. The show. So we definitely thank everybody for their immense support, and we continue to entertain and enlighten and enjoy with all of you out there.
absolutely. And again, if you've got any suggestions, we've had some fantastic feedback from people loving it. If you've got any suggestions for the songs you want, so for next week it's going to be 1968, do let us know. And we'll try and accommodate you, because this is, whilst this is Jody and I chatting away, but this is our love letter to our youth.
See you on the next episode, everyone. Next episode will be featuring the year 1968.
68, here we come. Jody, thank you so much, as always, for chatting to me about music. Your knowledge is incredible. And 68, everybody. We will see you on the next podcast, or hear you on the next podcast.
See you on the next. Yeah, exactly. Bye, everybody. Nick.
Bye, everybody.